All right, let's get this going, everybody. Hi. So we're just going to take some time for everybody to join me in the fun fest of streaming here. We're going to be doing part 2 of Soundwave. Yeah. So just letting everybody join, giving some time. I want to start just a little bit early just to get all the platforms up and running. Getting them going. I see people are joining us now. Welcome. So this should be a lot of fun. So again, just taking up from last week's stream, we're going to do some more Soundwave. And, I think I might join in on the little jack-o'-lantern fun that some of our streamers have been having and making a quick jack-o'-lantern. There'd be a couple cool things I'd like to show with that. Be really good and have a little fun. So, welcome. So talk amongst yourselves, coffee talk, because it's not exactly 3:30 my time yet. So, but thank you for tuning in. This should be a lot of fun again, and we're going to be going at it. So we will definitely be getting to Soundwave, and always take this opportunity to answer any questions that you might have as we go through here. Again, that's kind of, I like to roll that way. We like to call it tangents in my streams, or someone came up inception tangents. I like that kind of stuff. So by all means, fire away what you can in the chat, and I'll keep answering everything that's going on. So how is everyone doing today? Everyone's good? Everyone's doing well, I hope. And everyone, I would just assume, can hear me all right. I know you guys can see my screen, but I want to make sure you can also hear me as well. Can someone just throw in the old chat room for me that you can hear me okay? That I not just have moving lips right now. Anybody? Bueller, Spicoli, Andy Dufresne. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Murphy. All good. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Okie dokies. So again, I want to take. I'm going to do a little bit of the challenge that we've been doing, that some of our fellow streamers on our channel have been doing, and doing a jack-o'-lantern. So I'm just going to do a really quick one just for fun. Show you a couple features that I maybe would like to use, and these features might give you guys ideas to go and experiment with them. So I kind of want to show maybe some stuff that other people might not be aware of or might not even use, but there could be moments where it's very useful. Thanks, Nate. Nate H. Appreciate it. Okay. So let's start with just the jack-o'-lantern. Well, there's an extreme close-up of me right there. Ooh. I had to readjust myself in the seat. Sorry. So we'll come back to this guy. All right, that'll give also time for everyone to keep funneling in that one to watch more on Soundwave. So I want to create a base mesh for my jack-o'-lantern in essence, right? There's going to be multiple ways we can do this. We can just throw a sphere in here and then start using radial symmetry, which if you're not aware of that, I'll show that in here. But I want to show something else, which is, these objects up here, these things that are called sphere 3D, cube 3D, cylinder 3D. Those are in essence like a primitive. So I really like using the sweep profile. So I'm gonna turn off Soundwave for now, just so people aren't like, why you have Soundwave images and you're sculpting something else. So I find myself using this often to sometimes just do some basic shapes and get some things that I want. So it's very useful for me. What I like about it, and especially for something like this, I'm not gonna go to the traditional. I'm gonna be the pumpkin. When you go to the pumpkin patch, you look at it and go, oh, no one's gonna buy that one. I'm gonna make that kind of pumpkin where it's kind of elongated more a little bit, not so perfectly round, right? So in the initialized state, you're gonna have controls like this. Okay, so I'm going to just turn on my polyframe, which is Shift F, which is just going to show you the wireframing. And first of all, I'm going to have the ability to take away spans and add spans. Okay, and the reason why this sometimes can be fun and useful is now I've got a graph, and whatever I want to do to the graph is what's going to happen now in the middle, right? So if I add a dot, you can see I can add some volume. So make mine a little chubbier, and then up here I want to add some more volume through there. So I'm going to, in essence, get a shape that's a little bit more different, like a more elongated kind of pumpkin dude, right? So you can see just adding an image and you're just moving it around to literally change the shape up, right? So I'm going to go something, yeah. I'm going to go a little bit more that style, okay? And again, the benefit here is you can take away polygons on the fly as well, right? So, or you can go ahead and add more that you want to. So this is a great way to just create very unique, different things. And then there's two graphs. There's the S profile, and then there's your T profile, right? That you have here too. Depending on what you're making and how this model, what axis it's on, is going to be the graph. So this is all this is. It's just a quick way to get some kind of base mesh with just some kind of silhouette volume. And of course, I'm always looking at this little guy in the top left while I'm doing things like this and working on that. Okay. So this can be very useful. The reason why maybe you might want to also do something like this, right? So a pumpkin, you know, especially obviously you look at all the ones, have like, you know, you kind of, there's a surfaces that round out and then it comes in and has like a cut and then rounds out again and cut. Like that's the popular look of a pumpkin in essence, right? So one benefit of maybe using something like this is we're getting equally distributed polygons, right? And I'm saying how many do I want here, right? So I can knock this down to 24 if I want to, right? I can put it at 48, whatever number I want. In essence, it doesn't matter, right? Okay. So the only reason why I'm bringing this up, if there's some people out there, maybe you want to do something like, let's make this a poly mesh now. Bing. Okay. And then yes, to your question, 3D. Yes, I'm using this before I'm making it a poly mesh. That's why I just made it a poly mesh. That's the beauty of all of these. Like there's so many things. Like the helix, I've used it for a lot of things. Like there's a spring, right? Simple, boom. I've used it for curly hair, you know, kind of just less spans. Then you got all these profile settings that you can play with, right? It's just opens up your world a little bit more. And then just using sliders and a graph to make a different type of shape. So I find these useful. It really comes down to when you're looking at them, especially when we get back to Soundwave. There's certain things maybe that I'll look at and go, oh, I can just go grab one of those primitives and get that base mesh shape that I want. Okay. So here's a reason why maybe I would be bringing this up. Okay. If we're maybe one of those artists that like me sometimes, oh, I want to have that perfect topology, right? I can, if I wanted to. Let's do this. Let's take this cap. Let's get rid of that cap. All right, and I'm going to get rid of the bottom one too. Okay, so I don't want to get rid of all of that. That's enough. Okay, so I have open top and open bottom. Okay, as an example. Right, so I'm going to go to geometry, modify topology, and I'm going to do a delete hidden. So something that you guys obviously could be doing here is our pumpkin's got to have a surface that goes out and in, out and in, out and in, right? So what I mean is going out, and then there's cuts through here, right? So I could use the existing topology to help me with that if I wanted to. If I wanted to be really perfect. So this would be an example of something like a pumpkin. It probably wouldn't be this perfect because it's organic, but maybe there's times where you guys want to do something where you do want a surface that inflates out and then it's not inflated, inflates out and not inflated. So here's an example of maybe doing that. I'm just going to do a part of it so you guys can get the idea of what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to ZModeler actually. I'm going to hover over a face and I'm going to switch to polygroup, right? And I'm going to switch to polyloop as my target. So I'm going to go polygroup, polyloop, okay, as my target. And I'm going to zoom in here. When you're looking at a face, let's see, I'm going to turn, I think you guys can see it better that way. So you can see, obviously, I'm hovering over the face, and there's that orange line that you see. And as I move around that orange line, you can see it will move my hand, in essence. That orange line is going around the clock, right? So what that's doing is that's saying what way of the poly loop do I want to go. So I could do something like that, and now I've assigned a new poly group there. Okay, so you can by hand just go, okay, I'm going to skip and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then that one, right? And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So this is me just getting perfect. In essence, the same spans going across, right? So in essence, the same gap is happening there. No matter what way I go, right? I got that same gap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I will bring in radial symmetry here in a second. I just want this to kind of be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as an example. Oops. Okay, so if we look at this one, it's going to become like a squash almost now. They're all perfectly spanned across, right? So we can even say, all right, I'm going to divide up just a little bit, all right? And then now I'm going to say take this polygroup, right? And I'm going to mask it off, right? So in essence, this is what we have. And now all I have to do is go down here to deformation and then come here to my inflate, and then I can inflate out, right? And you see, if I hide my mask, this is what we're getting. So I'm only bringing this up because if I'm using, say, something like that sweep profile, you can set yourself up for perfect topology completely going around. And then in essence, having something like this, I could see being on like a shoulder of a puffy shirt from like medieval times or something like that. Okay? So this would be a way to do something like that. It's just another way. And then of course, if I clear my mask and I divide up, see, that's going to all start smoothing down, and I can smooth this down, right? And then now I've got a little bit of that look happening that's more pumpkin-esque look, okay? As far as your question, MGS13, not right this moment unless you want to use Sidecar. So it will work with Sidecar. So if you do have an iPad Pro, okay, and ZBrush, I've used it on mine, it'll work. But is that a standalone application? No, not right now. Okay, so I'm going this route. I'm just going to go this route of probably what mostly everyone did their jack-o'-lanterns in, is with this. I'm going to say, all right, let's divide this up a little bit so it's a lot smoother surface. And now I'm just going to Dynamesh this. So I'm going to turn the blur off. I'm going to Dynamesh. I'm going to say, no, don't keep my subdivision levels. I don't really care. Okay, so now we've got this shape. And I want to mess with this shape a little bit. I'm going to mess around with this a little bit. So I'm going to switch to move, right? And then that way I can move things around. Now here's where we also can kind of move this around as a unit. And what I mean by that is I'm going to go to transform. I'm going to turn on our symmetry here. So this particular shape I'm making is up Y and then it's looking straight at us. So I'm going to go along the Y axis and I'm going to turn on my radial symmetry. Okay? Yeah, it's an app that's in the operating system called Sidecar if you have an Apple computer with an iPad. So there are other apps available too. There's other apps you can use too. One's called Rocket Launch, I think, or something like that. I don't remember the exact name. So you can do this 24, and you can see all this is giving me is 24 points, right? And then I'm always working with that much. So this is a quick way to even change the volume a little bit more. Maybe I want to play with that a little bit more, right? Soften around. I don't think a jack-o'-lantern should be necessarily, the pumpkin shouldn't be perfect probably, right? But right now we are doing a little bit of perfection. So I'm just using radial symmetry to just try to get a general different shape to my pumpkin. I want mine to be a little bit more weird. In essence. Yeah. Let's put a little more volume in there. Let's give them a little more volume. I'm gonna go for what is not the normal pumpkin. I'm going for the pumpkin that's in the corner of the patch. Nobody wants to buy him. Nobody wants him. Okay, just something a little bit more like this. So here's something that I would do that would be really fun to do. Hey, Franken. So I'm going to fill this obviously with color first. So let's fill it with some kind of orange. So I'm going to find an orange that maybe that I want to use. There we go. That's a good orange. That's a pretty good pumpkin color. All right. And I'm going to say, let's turn on RGB now for this brush. And I'm going to go to color and I'm going to say fill object. So what that's going to do now is this particular mesh is filled completely with this orange color. Okay, and I'll know that if I go to my subtools, you can see the little brush icon is now turned on. All right, So I'm going to turn this off for a second. And what I'm going to do is you can see over here now, if I come over, follow me this way. If I look at my color over here, right, I've got orange and a black. Okay, if I hit the V key, you can see we swap between those two colors. Okay, so I'm going to take this black now, and let's change the color of this. And let's make this be some kind of, you might have a yellowish color, yellow-orange color. Obviously very different than the orange we picked. That looks pretty good. Okay, and I'm going to switch it back hitting the V key. So we'll have orange again is our main color, and our secondary color is this little creamish color. So I'm going to turn my Polypaint back on for my subtool. Okay, and what's going to happen here now is when we sculpt, okay, I'm going to turn off radial now. So let me turn off radial and just go to X symmetry, so that when I'm sculpting over here, right, I can start, well, maybe I want to put eyes. So watch this. This is the cool thing. I can now start sculpting inward, and you can see I'm pretty much sculpting, right, with the color that's the secondary color. So I'm doing this because obviously the internal part of a pumpkin is very different, right, than obviously the orange. So this is going to work with any brush that you want to have painting on. So right now I just switched to Damien Standard and see that's just pushing in. Okay. So if I turn on RGB, this is now going to paint with orange. Okay, because this brush by default set up for Z sub. Okay, and what's happening here, and this will help you understand, is when a brush is set to Z add, it's adding. And so what it's doing, it's sculpting and then adding with the main color. If I hold the Alt key, what I'm actually switching to is I'm switching to Z sub in this case, and then it's also switching to this color. And the reason why that's happening is because I have alternate turned on here. So that alternate button actually lets me like kind of quickly, why? So I'm going to do more of like a crazy, I'm going Fright Night mouth size. Like the original Fright Night, the 80s version. Thank you very much. Okay, so now anytime I sculpt in, not only am I sculpting in, okay, but I'm also painting with a completely different color, which is pretty handy. If for something like this, it comes in pretty handy, kind of just doing your pumpkin this way, right? And then now I want to add some surface through here and add some through here, right? And then so now I get a little bit of a lip through there, okay? So this can really change some things up for me, right? And again, if I'm switching the brushes, any brush that I want this to do with, I got to make sure it's got the same setup. So it's just a fun way for me to have some fun with this jack-o'-lantern. Let's make them have more of like eyes like that, like the human skull kind of look to it, right? And I like using this brush, this clay buildup brush, to do some quick building up. It's just a great way to start working, right? So it's fun to be able to do this. I like this. And then switch back to my Damien Standard, all right? And then now maybe I do want to throw that radial back on again, right? And then, of course, when I do this, right, you're going to get that. So if I'm going to hold the Alt key, what's going to happen is it's going to paint that as well, right? So if I turn off the alternate, then I don't get that. So you guys can see the difference here, right? That's too many. So this is something, for me, I'd probably do this kind of thing on the pumpkin, maybe even last, right? Add a little bit of element to it. So I'm just going to make something here. Again, I'm going just weird. It's Halloween. Let's go weird. Let's make his eyes be a little more different. Oh, I have radial on right now. Let's turn that off. I'm going to make his eyes be a little different, and then, right? And we'll turn on that alternate again so I can build up some surface like that. So it's just, and it's a great way to just see the colors, right? And it's, again, people, this also isn't just, think about even things with materials. I can start assigning different materials okay, to do this. I wouldn't do this all the time, though. It really comes down to you as the artist, what you want to do. Okay, so because I want to get back to Soundwave, because some of you might be here to really look at the continuation from last week. I just wanted to jump in on the fun that all the streamers were having with this, right? And, you know, I'm going to just give it some kind of crazy. It's our world, man. We're just here living in it, right? So then when I cut in, right, this will be a great way to just put a little bit of some kind of lips. We'll redynamesh that at any point in time. Yeah, there. Happy little, there. He needs little lips. There. I'm going to go up in a little bit more resolution now. Here I'm going to double my resolution just so I can start getting a little bit more cutting into the surface here with this brush. Right, just keep really quickly. Something like this too, I would probably definitely turn off symmetry mode. Because then it just gets too repetitive, right? Oh yeah, there, happy little trees. I'm going Fright Night theme, and I'm gonna do something else. Yeah, there. Just going the original 80s as like my inspiration. I guess I can pull up the image of the girl that's in my head. Have you guys seen the 80s version of Fright Night? Who's seen the 80s version of Fright Night? And then this is great because then now I can start, you know, putting a little bit. So for those that have seen it, if you remember the main actor, the girlfriend that's in the movie, that's kind of where my head's at right now. So, yeah. Okay, and if you don't want to blur the color when you're smoothing, see like this, see how it's blurring the color along with the sculpt? When you're holding the shift key, just turn off the RGB, and then the only thing I'm smoothing is the sculpt, right? And then the paint staying. So there's a lot of freedom here for us, for sure, to mess and manipulate with this. So I think we should, what do you think? Should we give him some eyebrows? Okay, so let's give him some eyes. Let's give him some of those. These wonderful eyeballs. Okay, so let's make a new subtool. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a sphere. Okay, I'm going to draw out like that. I'm going to tell ZBrush, let's split these off based by the masked, unmasked points. So when I drew out those spheres, they're separate pieces that are not the same, right, as this. So I'm just going to click one of these two unmasked or masked points. Okay, and then now my eyes are this. And this is going to allow me now to position the eyes if I want to somewhere, right, and move them differently. Maybe I go a little bit smaller. And let's get a little crazy. Let's make the eyes be a different color. So let's turn this painting off. Let's maybe do some kind of like a red. Let's go red. Let's just see what different colors look like. I think I'm going to go red though. Like kind of like back to that Fright Night reference. Okay, so I'm going to go red. And on top of that, let's also assign a different material. So a good material for eyeballs that you can use. There's obviously several materials here that you can use for that. And many people will use different ones. So like jelly bean could be interesting, right? So you can see everything's changing. It's because this is not assigned any material and this is not assigned any material. So let's first assign our jack-o'-lantern here a material. So I'm going to do basic. Let's do some kind of shiny. Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to just assign that material. So I'm going to hit this M key, color, fill object. Then I'm going to go to this. Okay, we got red. And then now let's use a completely different material for just the eyeballs. Okay, so I'm going to use a different color, right? And I'm going to use a different material as well. Okay, so that we can get something that it'll help it pop a little bit. So let's see. Let's see. Jelly beans, I think a little too extreme for me. There's too much going on in the jelly bean world for me. So toy plastics are a very popular one. A lot of people like to use toy plastics. So let's go with that one. So I'm going to go with this red. And so this time I'm going to go mRGB on the top because I want to fill material and color. And I'm going to go color, fill object. Okay? So now this has got that color. Yeah, 100%. I'll show you. I'll show you. Even think about the Boolean. Wait for it. Wait for the Boolean thing. I'm gonna bring Booleans in. Don't you worry. All right. So I'm gonna switch to the paintbrush. Let's do paint, and let's grab a different color. Let's go a little bit. Let's go more towards in a black tone, and let's go with painting now. Just a little bit of some black tone in there. Pull out a little bit. Yeah, something like that. And let's now bring in another little bit of a red tone in here as well. Just getting a little variation, just something different, right? So you can see the toy wax has got that little shiny white mark. Of course, painterly, you guys can just do yourself, right? Throw a little paint in there, and then see it's got like a double thing. I'm also going to switch back to this. I'm going to turn off the alternate, and the black part, right? What I want to do is no color. Okay, I'm going to just push that in a little bit, just so there's some crazy little depth there. Just something different. Pull it out a little bit, just so the light will hit a little different in there. And now let me put back my little white mark. I kind of liked that, so let me put that back on him. Yeah, there we go. So those are my eyes. Okay, great. All right, so let's start giving some teeth to this guy. All right, so let's throw that on there. So I want to use, again, another piece of topology. Okay, so we can use many things to do this. Okay, you'd really like that alternate thing, huh? So don't understand what's this usage of the M button, MRG button. Okay, so let me walk you through this. Okay, so the usage of the M and MRGB. Okay, so you got to look at color-wise. There's either color like RGB coloring, all right, and then there's materials, and the materials have obviously parameters and attributes to it, i.e. some of them have certain color. Like, see, that looks like a gold. That looks like a reflective red material. Okay, so the M means the only thing, when you have just M on, the only thing that you want to manipulate and mess with is material. I'm going to fix my camera's not perfectly straight. Right, so that's when I have the M on, that's it. The only thing I want to mess with is material. So for example, this pumpkin, right, has a material assigned to it. If I want to know what that material is, I can click here and drag over, and you can see the material I have now is a basic material. That's what I have selected here, basic. Right, and if I now select a different material, let's go with something extreme. Let's do normal material, right? Okay, this has now nothing changing. But if I go now and paint, right, what I'm actually painting with is not color. I'm painting with the material. That's what that M key means. It's telling ZBrush, paint only with the material. If I turn on RGB, then it's completely ignoring the material, and all it's looking at is the colors. Right? This is all it's going to be looking at, is this color here. Right? So see, now I'm painting that green. Whatever this color is right here, that's what I'm getting. Okay? And if I want to pick this orange again, I hold the C key, and you can see I can grab any color here. So here's my orange, and now I can, in essence, erase almost. So you think about it, remember that alternate thing? You guys could also, you know, take this color and make this be like some kind of darker orange, maybe something like this, and you guys can turn on that alternate, right? And in this brush the paint, you're painting with this color, and then if you hold the Alt key, you get the other color. Okay, so all this is saying, pay attention to the colors. That's what it's saying, is pay attention to that, right? And with that said, you guys can also turn on this gradient, and you can actually see paint with a gradient. So it's painting with both colors right now. Okay, so that can be very useful because maybe you do something like that, right? And you want to be able to have some kind of gradient. Maybe I don't go as dark with this, right? And it's just, see, something like this, and I can painterly paint in stuff and paint some depth that way, even just with paint. Okay? And then so what our MRGB means is pay attention to both now. Pay attention to the material and the color. So when I paint, I'm painting with material and whatever color is the selected color. Okay? So if we go with a material that isn't so strong, I don't know, here, we'll go with droplet, I guess. You can see I'm painting with material and the color. So here, if we switch this color to like a green, right, you see now the material also has a green tint to it. So that's the difference between M and then just RGB and then mRGB. Does that make sense to the person that asked? Are you with me? Let's actually select that toy again. Toy plastic. And I'm going to switch to M because this, I don't want to affect the color. Color, fill object. And now that's only filling the material. Okay, did that help? Cool. Where's that person who was asking the question? Uzaris. Did that clear it up for you? Okay, really. Okay, good. All right, cleared it up for you. All right, let's continue on this jack-o'-lantern theme going on here. So let's make this easy on myself. Let's go easy here on this. Okay, so I want to start populating some teeth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to an insert mesh brush. I'm going to select a sphere, right? So that means is I can draw out spheres, beep, 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 right through here. Okay. I want those spheres to sit a certain depth, number one. So you can see it's kind of sitting on top of him. So I'm going to go in the brush palette here. I'm going to go to depth. And this embed right here, I'm going to drop this down. Let's just put it at 50 right now. And so you can see there's a bit of the sphere now sitting inside the surface. That's kind of what I want, right? So again, brush, and then your depth with your embed says, so how much of that sphere is going to, in this case, sit within the surface or outside the surface? Okay? Cool? Alec, did we do something that you were like, what just happened? Nightmare Before, I'll take it, Nightmare Before Christmas. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I want to use these spheres as teeth in essence. Okay, it's just base message for teeth. All right, because I'm going to do something else to these. Again, I'm going in my head a little more Fright Night themed pumpkin here. And obviously, have you seen people? Have any of you seen like what people sculpt with on pumpkins now? It's insane. Like full on what we do in ZBrush, people are doing with pumpkins. It's awesome. I would go that route, but I kind of want to get back to my Soundwave because I'm itching to get a Soundwave anyways. What I'm going to do now is in the stroke palette, I'm going to come over here and turn on curve mode. What that's now going to give me the ability to is draw a curve. Okay, and then you can see I'm getting multiple, right, of these spheres. Okay, I'm going to go with not being symmetrical because I don't think any of the teeth should be the same, right? What I mean by that is some will be sticking out, sticking in, sticking out, sticking in, sticking out, kind of a thing, all right? That's what they're going to do. Cool. So I'm going to say maybe they're a little too close for me, number one. So in the stroke palette, I'm going to up this curve stepping. Let's see if I put a little bit of a gap. I'm going to do 1.25. I want to put a little bit of gap in this. So when I draw them out, see there's some spacing in the teeth. Something like that looks good to me. Okay? So I would just draw this out and say I want to continue that curve. Oh yeah. Perfecto. And this is why I've turned off symmetry. I don't want it to be perfect wherever I click. So for me, when I'm adjusting curves, I love turning on this lock start and locking end. Okay? And then now, oh yeah, or even weird science. God, you guys are just bringing it today. I love it. It's totally a little weird science. I'm with you, James. 100%. Thanks for bringing the 80s in, baby. Yes. Yes. Right? So I'm going to say these are a great little base mesh for teeth, right? These are perfect. So I'm going to split these off. I don't need that, right? So now I got these pearl teeth. Let me make some along the bottom. And this time for the bottom, let's skip and go every other this time. So let me go back to my jack-o'-lantern. And the bottom teeth are going to be here. And I'm just going to continue that curve. So I know I can continue the curve because you see how it switches from red to blue, red to blue, red to blue. When it's this blue, you see there's a red line. That's telling me it's going to continue the curve from where I was. Okay, and then of course I can edit this curve however I want. And I've locked, again, I've gone to the stroke palette, and I've locked the start and the end here. So it gives me some great control of me just quickly manipulating these where I want. All right, so perfect, perfect. I love them. I love it. It's all coming together for me now. All right, so I'm going to unmask. So now I've got these teeth and I got these teeth. So what I want to now start doing is messing with the teeth. So you guys would eventually go to say something like the move brush, right? And what I want to do is start just making these teeth be irregular, right? They shouldn't be a perfect sphere now, right? I want them to be a little irregular. Now, when you go to a big brush size, right, you can do a lot, but you see what's happening here? We're moving everything. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to switch to a different topology moving brush so that no matter how big my brush size is, because I'm going to bring some teeth up into the pumpkin, because again, I'm going Fright Night more. And again, 80s version, because for those that know me, I'm obsessed with the 80s. So I'm going to just make some really crude, crazy teeth. And this is allowing me to just move the teeth around real quickly and messing with it. So what I've switched to here is actually move topological. Okay, and what's nice about this is this brush, even though we know it, this isn't just a brush for what I'm doing. Okay, this is a mode that's actually turned on, right, within the brush palette. Right? Oh yeah, I'm not worried about making his teeth perfect because he's supposed to have like ugly, crazy, more. I'm going more monster, crazy stuff happening with his teeth. It's my world, man. I'm just living in there. Okay, so what's been activated with this move brush is here in the brush palette, in our auto masking, there's a button called topological. Okay, so this is great for that. So people, you can use this for anything. Some of you might like using the snake hook as an example, right? And in fact, using snake hook with Sculptress Pro can be really nice, right? And you see it's turning orange because this brush has right now RGB turned on. So if I turn it off, it'll stay white. So this brush, I can do whatever I want with and move it around and then keep messing with this, right? And if I go with a larger brush size, you see everything's moving. So then I can start using things like this, turn on topological, right? And it'll have a little bit more freedom. Now, when you're using Sculptress Pro, the auto masking stuff is not going to work. Okay? So you got to keep that in mind. Right? So when I'm doing this, it just turned off that mode. But I just wanted to show a different way of messing around with this. Okay? So me, for something like this, I just like using the move topological brush and then just start messing with every tooth. Of course, I could have just drawn out some sharp teeth like I did with my gremlin that we did in previous streams. And so this is all I would do. I just wanted to get some quick base meshes to just give me something that would look like teeth. And I'm just going to really quickly just start moving all these around and start making it look like some kind of more crazy creature type tooth feeling and not perfect spheres. Let's give him a little tooth right there. Yeah, there. Right, something like this. He is looking a little bit like a scarecrow. I will say that. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Whoever said that before. Right, and then if we're in Dynamesh mode, I can re-Dynamesh this at any time too to mess with the shapes. Right, you guys kind of get where I'm going with this, right? I'm not going to spend the whole time here messing and manipulating every single tooth, but you get the idea. You get the idea. Okay? Oh, that chiclet. Let's move this little chiclet back. Let's move that one back. There we go. Oh yeah. Maybe we should have gave him like a buck tooth. That would be cool. Which, by the way, people, if you go to a brush size of 1, you can actually just move the shape without actually deforming it. So I'm not even switching to gizmo. I'm just switching my brush size to 1. And because we're using the topological, it's just going to move these around where I would want them to be maybe. And then now this is the bottom tooth, bottom tooth, bottom tooth. Now these are the top teeth. Let's do something like this. Just manipulate, switch back to the bottom. Let's get these bottoms where I want them. Perfect. Switch back to the top. Let's not. We're saving. We're saving. Let's push some of these to be at different depths as well. So again, I got the one key. I'm draw sizing of 1, and that's allowing me to do this. So now if I go to bigger draw size again, now that I've got these in a position, I just do simple, like I can just go this route. Use the Alt key and then just make them all be pointy teeth. And then just have them going different directions. He needs to go see a dentist. He's gotten some real dental issues. Yeah, there. Perfect. Yes. Yes! Okay, so someone brought up using live Boolean. That's perfect, right? So if I want to start maybe doing some stuff with like making some chips and some irregularity in this, okay, I could totally use live Booleans for that. So I'm going to, let's insert a sphere. Let's just insert that right here, okay? And let's size this up, maybe do something like this. And let's pick the interior color here, right? So let's get this color on it. All right, I'm going to go, again, let's go to a sculptural brush. I'm going to switch to RGB, which is for my color, fill the object. So now that sphere, okay, has that color. Let's, for giggles, just for fun, let's throw a different material on it too. So I'm going to give it chalk because it's not shiny, okay? So I'm going to then say M because I'm only changing the material right now, color, fill object. Okay, and then now if I turn this into a subtractive here in my live Booleans and turn on live Booleans, this is cutting into the surface, right? So as a user, I can move this however I want, right? But it is also a surface. So if I'm, say, sculpting on this, I can sculpt on this and say this guy's got some damage. Somebody went crazy on him and started chopping into him. Or maybe, let's take my daughter as an example. You know, we need the hole where we need to get all the seeds out. So I'm going to use this shape, in essence, to make those seeded holes. Okay? And I'm going to make sure I'm using something like Dynamesh, so I can re-Dynamesh, and then just start sculpting on this. Right? And I'm just digging into the surface now, or adding to the surface. So what I'm actually sculpting on is the sphere. That's what I'm sculpting on, right? I'm sculpting on this shape right here, that, right? And then because I'm in live Boolean mode, this is what I'm going to get. I'm getting this stuff, right? And then now maybe start Damien standard in it. Here, we've switched all this, so let me bring in the normal Damien standard. And just start making some kind of quick iterations in here. And so my pumpkin's got some serious damage on the top. He has been messed with. Yeah, there. Happy little trees. Happy little, well, he's not happy. He's definitely not happy, right? And then there you go. I've got this broken up little jack-o'-lantern. And then for me, let's now throw in that radial again. Let's do 12. And do something like that. I'm not going to go as strong. I'm going to go something like that. I'll go that route. Something like that will work for me. Quick and easy, simple. Right? There you go. Okay, so there you go. There's my little jack-o'-lantern that's happening through there. And I've used live Booleans. I've used the ability to paint and sculpt at the same time. I've used a curve brush. So the question that Vita, you're asking, what is a normal resolution for rendering so it isn't going to blur and grain? Well, when you go to render, it's all based upon your document size. So in your document is where you set your resolution. So whatever resolution you want for the render, that's where you would do that. Okay, I hit my camera. I keep hitting my camera. Okay, so and then when I go to render, you do this, right? Okay. In fact, let's have some more fun with this. Let's look at the floor. Let's do one more thing with this. Okay, so I got this. If I turn the floor on now, it's rendering, right? And it can see the floor. Let's do something else with this. Okay? Why not? Let's do this. Let's go to dynamics. Okay? And let's tell it to calculate the volume. Let's use some dynamics here. And let's make this pumpkin kind of droopy a little bit. Like if I'm making his head look like that, let's do everything else like this, okay? And I'm going to switch to, let's switch to the cloth one. Right? So I want to be able to kind of manipulate this a little bit and have some fun with this, right? So dynamics-wise, we could definitely look at this and start manipulating this, right? And start maybe having some fun with this and seeing what collisions we can get with this as well. So using that could be fun. So I got a little bit of gravity, collision. Oh, this mesh is sitting at 358,000 polygons. Okay. So I need to get either lower or I need to up this slider. So I'll just up this slider to, let's go 500, so that when it goes to manipulate it, I want it to just hit the ground a little bit, and so that it'll touch the ground. Yes! He's scary now. This is now just, I don't know, having some fun with it, some dynamics, right? And it's using all the surfaces that I've turned on, in essence. So every single subtool. So if I don't want to like have the teeth and everything involved in that, I could totally do that, right? I could turn this stuff off that I don't want manipulation happen, and then recalculate, and then go and do this, and maybe just, I want just this to hit with the ground a little bit. Give him some droopy droops. And then it's using this piece, and then now I can turn all this stuff back on. Okay? And then now maybe reposition my eyes back to maybe where I want them. These teeth, I'll position them back there, and these I'll maybe position back into there. Right? So now I got something that looks like that. A little crazy. And then I can go back to this and see this happened on the bottom because it hit the floor. But I can go back to this now and just go back to not having any calculation and messing with this again. Right? So this is also the beauty of live Booleans, is I can continually keep changing this surface. And really what I'm messing with, right, is not this pumpkin, is not this mesh. I'm messing with this mesh. Okay? What's going on, Stan? So there you go. There's my pumpkin. There's my guy that I made. You guys got it. Let's move on back to Soundwave. What time do we got here? I'm going to take a drink right here because we're already 45 minutes in. Cool? Joe, I usually, oh yes, James Critters, you're bringing it today. Right now I'm using just a Cintiq. It's the 22. It's their new 22, which is a well-priced version. I'm mostly Cintiqs. When I use a tablet, I like the medium size that I use. I use a Wacom one. I have a large one, but I like the medium size. It's better for traveling. So I'll use that instead. So there we have it. Good to go. Some kind of, I feel like I just want to play with him and put like a big candle on his head now and put some wax and everything in him. So there you go. Here, we'll just save this out, export this. I'll put it on the desktop. We'll call that Jack. And we'll make it a JPEG. Right? And then I can even crop this down if I wanted to. See? I'm not going to crop it and just say OK. All right? Yeah, the camera, I keep kicking the camera. There you go. Sorry. The camera's like right by my feet, and I'm tall, and I keep kicking it. All right, cool. Not the best jack-o'-lantern, but I kind of wanted to show you guys just some different techniques of attacking this. And a lot of our streamers are doing like jack-o'-lantern, so you guys should try this just for fun. Make your own like this, jack-o'-lantern, just see where you're going. Have some fun with it. And I would recommend looking up what people really do sculpturally with pumpkins, because it's crazy, like what people are doing now. All right, did I miss any questions? Okay, so let's go back to Soundwave. Okay, let's go back to him, because I want to start now going into the next stage. So we'll turn this back on. All right, and oh wow, it's hot in here. So I want to start looking at maybe cleaning up some of these surfaces. So I want to show a couple techniques and a couple ways that would go about doing this. All right, and you got to choose which one's going to be best for you, right? And sometimes it'll come down to the shape itself. All right, so I want to look at just the chest plate right now. Okay, let's look at the yellow portion in here, right? So what I'm going to do now is let's start separating this off. So this is obviously going to be the piece that pops off, right? His chest. Bing. So I need that to be a separate subtool. Okay. So I'm going to click on this with polygrouping. And in my subtools, I'm going to split the hidden. So now what we have here is this stuff. So I'm going to start doing stuff with his chest. Okay, so I'm going to start making pieces. So right out the gate, I'm going to make a new folder. Okay, I'm just going to call this upper chest for now. And then this is also part of it. So these pieces, in essence, make up the top part of his chest. All right. So let's look at just only this piece right now, just this one. Okay, so what we have here is a shape that looks like this. Okay, and I'm going to be making something that pops open, right? So there needs to be a thickness here. So right out the gate, you can see my thickness, it's too much, right? Because eventually I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be, doing something like this, and then I'm going to say, okay, this needs to pop open like that, right? And Ravage and all that, Ravage and Laserbeak have to pop out of this. So you can see this is way too big. Okay, so I need to fix that. Okay, so the easiest way for me to fix that, I'm going to turn on this, would be to just use the clipping brushes or something like that. I'm going to use the trim brush. This is an example where I would use the trim brush. Okay, so I'm going to go, this should only be maybe about that big. And that's going to trim and make a new polygroup for me, is what's happening here, right? So I've got a new polygroup there, which is fine by me. That's actually what I want. Okay, and then I'm going to say, let's keep doing this. Let's now make this look a little bit more hard surface sharp. Okay? So on the bottom here, I want to add this element. So this needs to be having a little cut there. Then I want a cut there. Then I want a little bit of a cut there. And I want a little bit of cut across here. And then another one on the bottom. Okay? And what I'm making is every time I cut, I'm making what? I'm making new polygroups as well. Okay? So you can see every trim I'm doing, I'm getting a new polygroup. So, and then to give you the ultimate understanding of this, let's turn off the Polypaint. So I now have this, that if we look from every angle now, it's pretty sharp. I'm going to make sure that it's the same on both. So I'm just going to do a mirror and weld across it like this. Okay, so then when I look at solo, this is what I have. And then that's the piece that's going to start popping off. So now the thing is, this is a lot skinnier, right? So when I go now to do this, so if I do this, okay, and I'm rotating, right? Looking at it, this now is literally looking like the right thing for his chest to pop open and then unveil, Ravage or Laserbeak. Okay? So what I'm going to do now on top of this is I want to clean this up a little bit. So when you're trimming, you can see it's really triangulated. So if I'm using something for trim, I'm going to clean up the topology. And what I'm going to do that is I'm going to use ZRemesher. All right? And I'm going to tell ZRemesher, because the trim brush made polygrouping, I'm going to use that to my benefit. I'm going to use that to my advantage. Okay? So I'm going to say keep the groups. Okay? I don't need any smoothing. Okay? I definitely want it symmetrical, right? So I'd want to have symmetry on. And then I'm going to say, I don't need it at around 5,000. Way less is fine. So let me just start at 500. So I'm going to say 0.5. I'm going to remesh this. And then when it's done, which it is, it's been remeshed. And so what we have here now is this. Right? And you can see I've got clean topology now. Right? Going through this entire thing, which is perfect. That's all I wanted. And then now when I go to divide, I would use dynamic, right? And you can see everything kind of softens a little bit. Right? So this is dynamic off. This is dynamic on. Dynamic off, dynamic on. Okay? Something like that. All right? And then I say, okay, let's do something else with this. Let's, besides just turning on dynamic, which is right here, and I'm using the shortcuts, Shift D and D, Shift D and D. Okay? D turns it on, Shift D turns it off, and it's because I don't have regular subdivision levels. That's why this is happening. So what I'm going to do is open up this crease menu here. Right? And I'm going to do a crease PG. No, it's not for Paul Gaboury. It's for polygroups. So when I click this, you can see we get back that form again that we had. Okay, which was that shape originally, right? We had that shape going on there, which is great. That's what I want. All right? And then I'm going to say, now let's go ahead and not only crease, but let's go to the crease level here. And I want to tell ZBrush, what I want you to do is only hold the creasing for so long. All right? So I'm going to say 2 levels. Okay, nothing will change. So I'm now telling ZBrush, we've got creased edges, and for those that don't know, you can see here, if I do this, you see that those lines with the dot, 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 those are creased edges. So that's telling ZBrush, when you go to divide, those edges must stay in that same spot. They can't move, right? And what I'm now telling ZBrush is, actually that rule, only hold it for 2 subdivision levels. And so what I'm going to do now is come up here into my dynamic menu and see where it says smooth subdiv. You see that it says 2? If I move this now to like 3 and 4, you can see what happens to my corners now. See, they got a little bit softer. It's still there, but it's not the same as sitting at 2, right? So look closely. See, there's 2. Watch 3. See? 4. So I was allowed, in essence, to smooth that. So that's still hard surface, but you should have a little bit of some smoothness on it, right? And now we can start doing things with like ZModeler if we want to. And I can say, let's Q-mesh now, polygroup all, and let's pull this out, change the polygrouping on the fly. As an example, let's do something more like that. Okay? And then I'm going to switch to the gizmo. Now I'm going to hold the control key and tap on that outside polygroup is what I've done here. Okay, and then I'm going to click the little icon right here is a finder icon, and now let's just scale. Oops. Let me switch to the transpose, regular transpose, and I'm going to scale in, scale this way if I want to, and I'm just creating, a little bit of something that looks like that if I wanted to. Okay. And then now if I want to continue this creasing theme, I can go creasing right here and just crease these edges here. So the fact that I'm low polygon opens up my ability to use something like ZModeler and define maybe where I want some creasing And maybe I want something more like that, right? Which I probably don't want. It's not what I want to do, but you get the idea here. Okay, so this is one more flow where I used kind of the mesh that was pretty dense and then reduced it down and then started using things like ZModeler. Okay, so let's take another idea. Let's take this one now. Let's separate this one. So let's go ahead and split that, right? And then let's look at just this one. Okay, so let's take a different approach. This one I do want this wide because it needs to be front and his back, all right? And what I want to do is kind of more use this one as like a reference. And what I mean by that is I've figured out the proportion, I figured out the size, and I figured out the silhouette that I want for this particular piece, right? There's nothing here I need to edit. I know this is the angling I want there and there, right? I know this is the width I want and the height and everything else and the depth. I don't want to change anything. So let's take even a different approach with ZModeler now. So I'm going to, let's duplicate this one again, right? I'm going to turn on the gizmo, okay? I'm going to be out of symmetry mode, and I'm going to hit this little finder. It's kind of like the pin MapQuest thing. I'm here. Look at me. Look at me. I'm here, right? That's pretty much what it is, okay? So the gizmo's now been centered to this mesh's center, okay? And what I'm going to do now is click this little gear and now click a cube. Right? And what I get now is a cube. So what I'm going to do is get rid of all my spans so I have a 6-sided cube. Something like this. Okay? Everyone see that? So that's what these cones do. They add topology spans going either direction, X, Y, Z. That's what they're doing. Okay? So when I come out of solo mode, I've got now this 6-sided cube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw on transparency ghost. And now what I need to do is just resize this to be the size of the cube. So something like, okay, that's good there. And then I need the width to be there. Okay, so now I've got a 6-sided cube that's fitting the proportions that I want, and it's only 6 faces, so it's really low topology. Okay, it's not crazy here. And so what I'm going to do now is switching to ZModeler. I'm going to go with an insert edge. Okay, and I'm going to say I need an edge right there, and I need an edge right there. Okay, so that's where I need edges to live, those 2 parts. Okay, I didn't have symmetry on, so I'm going to mirror and weld this, and I have it on the other side. Okay, and then so now let's solo this out. All right, and what I need to do now is with QMesh actually get rid of this. So I have this left over. And then now I can say, do something, whoops, something like this. Right, there's my angle that I could get. That makes sense? And I can even delete that edge now, and I have this, and then keep readjusting even this angle if I want to a little bit. Right? So this is what I've got now, something like that. So very, very, very low polygon. Right? Something very simple here. Okay? And then the reason why maybe you want this, if we're going by like the 80s style, because this is so low in topology, okay, there's going to be other things that I'm going to do. Let's, in fact, even get rid of that edge loop. So make it even super low. So I'm going to turn on dynamic. And what we get here is just a beautiful mesh, some kind of, who knows, rounded, cylindrical looking piece thing here, right? Okay, what I want to do now is this particular piece, right? I want to come here into the dynamics menu, and I want to manipulate this. So instead of this being smooth, like this smooth slider is just in essence dividing. So this would be the same thing. So this is what, it almost looks like a squash Twinkie, right? It's getting the base mesh of a squash Twinkie. So what dynamics is doing is right now I'm telling it to divide 4 times. So if I turn off dynamic, all dynamic subdivs is doing is showing you guys a preview, right, of what this would look like if you divided 4 times. So you can see there's no difference between those two. The difference is this is now sitting at 3,500 polygons and it's got subdivision levels. This one's the exact same looking thing, but it's not sitting, it's sitting at 16, right? So when I do this, I can see the differences, okay? And what I'm going to do, though, instead is I don't want it to smooth at all. I kind of want this, it's obviously, it's Soundwave. He needs to be a little bit, you know, bulky, a little bit more going on there, right? Okay, so I'm going to come this shape. Again, that's really low polygons. I'm going to come into geometry, and instead, I'm going to throw on this Q grid. So I'm going to just move this to 1. All right? And what this is doing now is adding a bevel to every single edge loop that exists on it, and every single edge. So if we zoom in real close, you can see what this is doing, right? And if I don't know if you guys will be able to see it in the stream. Here, let me go bigger with the magnifier. Hold on. Let me go bigger. And let me have less zoom. No curvature. Okay, so you see that, see the dark lines, right? And then there's 2 like lines next to the dark lines that aren't as strong. That's what this Q grid's doing. So what it does is every single edge loop that actually does exist, take that edge loop and add another one on the left side and the right side. That's what we want you to do. And then create it so it's got a flat bevel. So that's what's happening now to my guy. He's getting a little bit of a bevel, right? Obviously that bevel, if we look, is pretty tiny. So this is where the coverage slider comes in. So I can make that be bigger if I want, right? And do something more like this. So you can actually manipulate this. And this is beveling every single edge and creating something with a little bit more, you know, to it. And because bevel is on, the profile is a flat profile. Now, if you turn off bevel and switch to chamfer, it's more of a rounded profile. Okay, so now all the edges are just getting rounded a little bit. But I control that little bitness, right? I manipulate that with this slider. So this is just another way to take something maybe, and I know somebody in the last stream asked me, well, why even do Dynamesh or something like this? You don't necessarily have to. I just like that mode for blocking things out because it's easy to remake something real fast like I just did. All right, and then go at this. And then there's now that piece, right? So that's the piece that's going to sit there. And then now I've got this piece for in here. Okay, and I'm starting to get things being made here, right? And then, of course, I'm going to want to have, obviously, the tape deck, old school, sitting inside of Soundwave. Okay, so I need to bring in some more live Boolean stuff in here, right? So this shape here is the part that opens up, okay? This shape here is the part that Laserbeak's going to sit in, okay? So I need to have a hole in this, right? So I need a hole there. So I could even just use this existing mesh that we made like this, right? If I really wanted to. And then let's put it below. So I'm going to rename this so you guys know. We're going to call this chest sub. Okay, and then let's call this the main chest. So we can start naming this. And then this is going to be rename tape deck front. Okay, so I need to I start knowing what is what. Okay, so I got the main chest, but I also have this thing. Okay, creating the same thing in essence. So I'm going to switch to our deformers. I'm going to switch to that extender. I'm going to make it be a little bit smaller that way and bring it in a little bit that way. Okay, I'm going to re-dynamesh that. And I'm going to turn this to subtractive now. Okay, and then this is now a subtractive piece. See, that's making the hole for me. Right, so do you see that? That is now digging in to the meshes right above it. Right, so I see this mesh. See how it's below it? So you see how you kind of see this right now? If I move this up one, and see, you can see that's now digging through both. Everything above it, right? And so even though I did a cleanup of the one mesh, I'm reusing the original mesh to do that. Yeah, I'm thinking about doing the actual pieces popping up. It's all bleed, Joe. It's like a continuation of the Thursday. So here's the thing, everybody. I have created a folder, right? So within this folder structure, I've got this piece being set as subtractive with live Boolean, so it's affecting everything above it, which means also this piece. So when this gets turned on, I'm losing that piece. So I would want that tape deck front part not to be within the line of these other three, right? Because this is starting here. So you do not have to move this in the folder structure. All I would need to tell ZBrush is this is a start group, right? And now what happens, you can see the front tape deck comes back into play, right? See how it just popped back into place? It's because I'm now telling ZBrush, yeah, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 meshes in a folder. So, and you got the bottom one of the 4 being in essence, cutting out, like digging into the surface. So it's going to do it to every single subtool above it. Our problem is it's pretty much deleting the tape deck part that I want popping out of his chest, right? It's completely getting rid of it. So what I'm going to do is, well, honestly, look at the start groups as kind of like their own like subfolder within the folder now. I can say, no. This mesh is going to be by itself, its own thing. And I'm going to do more to this actually, because obviously when I go to render this, I need a glass look, right? So I'm going to say start, and now that pops into place and that stays. So now you can see my one problem. What's my one problem here? The mesh that I'm actually using to cut is too big, right? It's just too big. And I don't think I need this angle in it anymore. So I'm going to come back to this, right? And we can use anything. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to go, it needs to go there to that point, and then come down to there. All right, so what I'm doing is this. And then now I'm going to say, let's go ahead, and I can trim this if I want to across. Right, and then now this is just pretty much a cube that's cutting into the surface. Right, and now if I turn this off, that's what I have now. Does that make sense? So you got a start group where I've got 1, 2, 3, which are the main big pieces of this. That's this piece and this piece. So this big piece here, and then this piece, right? They are being manipulated now by this cutting cube, right? Because I've done a start group, this top one now no longer is affected. And so you can see this is setting me up for down the road, and if I did want to make a render with the tape deck open, right, I'm already starting to set myself up for that. And this is kind of the process I'll start doing now next, because I've got all my proportions right where I want them. So now it's just starting to make the cool stuff and the cool factor and start sprinkling in some more features here now and cleaning these meshes up. So I'm showing you guys, in essence, stage 2 for me. Stage 1 was starting to block it out, get everything right, and then start manipulating and moving along here. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Have I lost anybody before I continue to move on? I'm just checking my time. Okay, great. All right, so let's continue looking at making stuff for him here. Okay, I want to keep looking at what can I do to start, looking at this. So let's look at some other shapes that start to pop out in here. Okay, i.e., we've got these triangles. Okay, you've got something like this little shape across his chest that's a little different, a little more unique. Okay, so stuff like this, there are multiple ways to do this for sure. Okay, I want to show a feature that I should be being used more than I think it is. So that's why I kind of want to show it, and it's just another way of making these pieces. Okay, so I'm going to use Spotlight. That's what I want to use. Okay, to start making the pieces up. So I'm going to click on the light box, which is the comma key. Right? I'm going to go into like the default, which is this. This is your projects. And so I'm going to say, give me the Spotlight tab. So by default, when you open in most cases, when you're by default, this is what you're going to have when you open up Lightbox, which I'm using the comma key, right? I'm going to go into Spotlight. And in here, there are images, okay? There are multiple things going on in here. So I'm going to load this one. Okay, I'm going to double tap, and you can see what we get in here, right? It's just a shapes, general shapes, nothing crazy going on in here, right? So there are two modes to Spotlight. There is a mode that is for manipulating the images, and then there's a mode for using the images to sculpt with or paint with. So right now I'm in the mode that's called Edit Spotlight. I'm looking to edit the images. When you see this big dial that we have here with all these icons, these are things that we can do to the images, right? So if I click anywhere in my document, you can see I can move around all these images as a unit, okay? I can change the organization of these images with one of these three icons here, okay? So I can do tile proportionately, tile selected, and then tile unified. So all these images are 512 by 512. But so it just organized all the images to the actual left. So if we threw something else, let's throw another image in here. Let's go to the texture, just so you guys get an idea of also what that's doing, because this is important. If you're going to start using this, you want to organize your stuff. So I'm going to load another image. So now I have another image loaded. Okay? And so now you have, again, tile proportionately. Okay? Tile selected. And then tile unified. Right? So tile proportionally goes, the biggest image goes on the top. So this image is the biggest image. This image is 408 pixels by 640 pixels. I know that because ZBrush is telling me that up here in the top left. So look up here. Look at me. Look at me. Right here, right? Top left. So when I click on this image, you see it's 408 by 640. Any other image I click on in this particular file, it's 512 by 512. So what these organizing buttons are doing is, hey, do you want to just throw everything to the left and put the biggest images at the top and work your way down? That's what tile proportionate. Tile selected means whatever the selected image is, make that the main big image, and then put all the little ones, other ones, below it, just relative same size. And then tile unified, just put everything over to the left side for me and make them all the same width going down. That's all that these are. Okay? So hopefully that helps making you guys understand things. So I'm going to use this triangle. So let's use this triangle. I'm going to size this up a little bit. Okay? So I got that triangle. Good. Okay? And what we're going to have the ability to do here is something pretty cool. And just like we were using that extender deformer, that's also available in Spotlight for the images. Right? This is what becomes really cool and awesome way to manipulate images. So we can now go, okay, I can mirror. So Christmas in the corner over here is where I'm going to go. I've got mirroring, okay, and flipping. I've got extend, and I've got tiling. So I like to call it Christmas in the corner because it's all red and green, red and green. So what I want to manipulate is this extender. So if I click this one, you can see what this just did to a triangle. Right? So this is now what I've done to my triangle. Right? It's pretty simple. It's just taking the triangle, splitting it down the middle, and then just extending from that point on like this. So the key thing here is the point of interest. Where this little spotlight dial that looks like old school rotary phone is sitting, that becomes important. So what I'm going to do is I'm looking at making that little thing that goes across his chest here. It's got kind of like almost like a kind of check marky. It's got like a little triangle, and then it goes straight across. So what I'm going to do is this dial controls where the extending happens, which is very useful. So what I mean by that is, if I now click on this and say, let's put it here, and then I go to extend, you see I get a very different looking shape. See that? This is starting to get more like what's on his chest, right? We're starting to get closer to that. So I'm actually extending the image, which is great. It's a great way of working, right? Can't complain. Right? So all I did, again, let's rewind, because we're doing a transformer. Okay? This dial, where this sits, does a lot of things. So it's the, number one is it's the pivot point. So the center of this, where that green and red line are meeting, that's the center. Right? That's the center of this dial. So what I have done is I can move this dial and snap. Okay, and how I can snap this is I click anywhere inside of this orange circle, and then now I just drag. And this allows me to move just the dial on the image. And so I can snap to the center bottom. I can snap to either one of the corners of the image. I can snap right to the middle of the image. I can even snap whatever the selected mesh is. I can even select this dial to the mesh and world center as well. Hey, have I lost anybody here? Speak up before we continue moving on here. Definitely, this is where I say throw some mud at me. Throw some mud at me. Right? So what I'm going to do now is, okay, I don't want to be dead center of this triangle. I want to be off a little bit, okay, in the space. So I'm going to click in the center of this circular and then start moving, and then I'm going to hold the shift key once I start moving. And what that's doing now is snapping this, as you see, it's to what? To that red line. And I'm looking at the green line saying, okay, right about there is where I want it to start extending. So then that's the point of interest where ZBrush is going to cut it, and one goes one direction and one goes another. So when I do this, I'm getting this now. Right? And that goes for now, if I also go this direction, right? That's going to change how the extend is looking as well. Where I sit, okay, will start changing things, right? Wherever I'm going with this. Does everyone understand this, what I'm doing here? So I want to do something more like that. Okay? And now this is that piece that's going to go on his, like the front of his chest, the cassette part that opens up. And then now, if we remember, right, we have the ability with this, okay, this is going to snap to whatever the selected subtool is. So to me, this is the important mesh, right? The cassette player front is the important part. That mesh is the important part. So I just came out of edit spotlight mode and went into, now I can go back to messing with Soundwave. Okay? So how I'm doing that is with the Z key. So Z key goes in and out of the modes. So when you see the big dial, just remember that's edit image, or i.e. edit spotlight mode. When you don't see the dial but you still see the image, that's completely different. So that's all I did there. I came in and out. Okay, so I'm going to come out just so I can really focus, kind of maybe zoom in closer to his chest, just so it takes up more of my document space right now. Now I'll go to this, and what now I have the ability here, right, is I can move this wherever I want. Right, you see I'm snapping to the mesh center. So this is the center of the whole image right here. And then now if I move, boom. And then I can do world. I can snap to the bottom of this mesh. I can snap to the corner of this mesh. This is going to come in handy. So I probably want to go right about there. So when you now, I told you guys, anytime you inside the circle, that allows you to move this. Anytime you click within side of that and this, you're just moving the image. So you see the dial's not moving now, but the image is. So that's the difference. When you're inside here, that's moving this. When you're out in this area, that's just moving this. So I'm going to snap to the center, and now I'm going to scale it down and say how big I want that. And then I want to move this in space, and I want it to be right about there. That's where I want it to be. Okay? And now I've got this image that looks like what I want to have on him. Okay? And in fact, I'm going to change this. I'm going to even throw one more thing at you. Hi from Tokyo. Man, you're watching. What time is it there? Wait, I got to remember what time is it here. Oh, it's early in the morning, right? You're 16 hours in front of me. So it's going on 5, 7. It's 9 in the morning. It's not too bad. Okay. I was like, man, are you up in the middle of the night? Right. So what I want to do is I'm going to go with, I want to make this be a little bit smaller. What I mean by that, there's a little too much volume to this image right now, like that image, right? So looking at it now, looking on the model, I'm going to go, let's go a little bit smaller. So I'm going to use this right here, this framing option. Okay? And when I'm clicking this, this is what I get. I can actually get a frame of the outside of the shape that I've been making. Right? So I'm going to undo, and you just click this, and you're just moving left to right, and it's just creating, in essence, an outlining frame. Okay? What I'm going to do is do this instead, which is the Alt key. Right? So I'm going to turn off this alternate that we've been playing with. Hold the Alt key and click this. Right? And then we're going to start getting that. Right? So this is looking at this color. So let me make this pure black, so that this gets like that. And see, this is now a little bit more of the scale I'm looking for. It's not too big, right? So this is, here, right? So there. See, this is what I want now, and this is what I had, right? So you see the big difference there? So I'm using this framing, in essence, to shrink the whole shape down, right? So again, Alt key, shrink it down, and then that's what I want. And the dial doesn't need to be there. If you guys notice, the image just needs to be selected right now. So I'm holding Alt and then framing it, right? And if I want to hold the Shift key, I can actually add to it. So I'm going to say that looks pretty good to me. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I like. Okay? I'm just reading a question. Oh, the Alt key. Gotta just hit that on every button and tool and see what it does. Yeah, the Alt key, there's a lot of hidden stuff here. Okay, so now that I have this image, I'm going to tell ZBrush, let's make this an actual piece of topology. To do that, all I do is click on this little camera. Right? And then ZBrush, you can see over here, automatically makes a new subtool. So if I turn this off, there's my topology piece. Right? I've got now a new subtool here. Good to go. So that's pretty cool. All right? So number one, where it's sitting in space and how it's sitting in space, let's do this. Let's turn everything off. Okay? And you see the thickness? It's the same thickness as what? That cassette piece that I've been putting together here. That front part, right? That I've been putting together here. The thickness is being controlled by the subtool that was selected. So this is our selected subtool when I was going and manipulating images. And that has a type of thickness to it. And so what this is doing, when you click this little camera, it's going, oh, I see you have a mesh selected. It's this thick. So I'm going to give you a mesh that deep, in essence, thickness, and make it a new subtool. So that's what happened here while I did this, right? So if I now just switch the gizmo, you can see I can pop this off the surface a little bit more, right? And then now I've got that piece. here's something else that I'm going to do to this. Okay? What this also does for me is not only do I get a thickness, but I get polygrouping. I get polygroups in the front, the back, and the middle. Right? And then to west, I'm going to come back to your question about rounding the edges. I'm going to come back. Don't you worry. Okay, so this, okay, I'm going to do one more thing. Watch this. I want to add a little bit more design element to this for me. So I'm going to come in here into the creasing menu of the geometry tool palette. And because this mesh, the way it was made, there's density in the front, and in the middle, it's just spans of topology, and then the same exact thing in the back. Okay, I'm going to come here to this bevel, and I'm going to say, let's add a bevel. Boom. Right, and now I've got something that looks a lot cooler, like there's got a little bit of a bevel to it on the front. Right, that looks a lot better than this. See the difference? So you guys can have as much, maybe you want to bevel this big. Maybe I want to bevel that big. Like I'd probably want just a slight bevel to that piece. Right? And what I'm doing is I'm doing a little hidden trick or tip. Okay? And no, Joe, it will not conform to the surface. It's only camera angle view. But there's something else that we can use to conform it to the surface. Okay? So the beveling that's happening here, instead of beveling based upon creasing, I'm beveling based upon polygroup. So of course, people, I could just do this. Let me turn this on, right? There is creasing there. So if I just click this, right, it's trying to bevel based upon where the creasing lives, right? And the problem is these topology right here is really long and thin, and this is way more dense out here, right? Right, so if you look at this, so what I'm going to tell ZBrush to do is, hey, well, instead of looking at the creasing, why don't you look at the polygrouping? So I'm going to hold the control key and click this, and you see I got a different bevel. That's more the bevel I'm looking for. Right, and then that's what I'm looking for, something like that. Right, that's what I want to have happening. Okay, so now this is how I start making more pieces for him, right? This is the process. Like for me, that was the fastest and easy way to make that piece that's on the cassette part that pops open. I want that to be a little bit raised surface, because if we reload, let's reload my spotlight of Soundwave. So the piece that I've been making is that little part right there, right? And then same thing there, right? I'm just doing my own version of it. Okay, so it's just got a unique shape, and I'm just using Spotlight to do it. Does that spotlight appear from the front and back, or only front? Do you mean like the images? Is that what you're referring to, Vita? The images are only going to float in front of the surface. You can't put the images behind the surface if that's what you're asking. Because this is a projection system as well, and in order to project, the image has to be in front of the surface. If it's behind the surface, there's nothing to project. So Spotlight has all the images in the front, because you can use Spotlight for also texturing and painting. And when I mean texturing, sculptural, textural stuff. Okay, so a question was asked, how do we make it be sharp? Okay, so I reloaded my Soundwave. So let's reload this spotlight. Let's remake this again, because it wasn't very difficult, right? All I did was I grabbed the triangle. That's all I did, right? I didn't do anything else special, okay? So Z key puts us back in that dial mode. So I'm going to collect my triangle. Let's just size this up just so I get something. And I'm going to move these all out of the way, so the only thing I'm looking at is the triangle. So think about Spotlight even. I like to think about even as, like, I'm sitting at a light table, and I've got a bunch of, like, little slide images as a photographer, and I'm looking at them. Think of it kind of even in that sense. Like, these are images we just spread all over the place. And you see, I just moved a bunch of the images off camera. They're sitting just off camera, but I can grab them anytime. So you can pull them back. But don't remember, this is why I also showed you guys those 3 options for sorting. At any point in time, you can grab them. And when we get back to my Soundwave image, you'll see I have other images besides the 2 we've been looking at. Okay, so let's get back to this. So again, I want this image selected. I'm going to snap here, And I'm going to start moving this and then hold the shift key. And now it only moves along the red. So I'm going to say right about there. So where the green is where it's going to start changing when I go and do this. Right? So the red goes this way, the green goes, there's a rocket. Woo, it's a rocket. Okay, so the green is this way, the red is this way. So green Y, red X, hence Christmas in the corner. Ho, ho, ho. Okay, so I'm going to go with the red and do this. Now, the question got brought up is when we were making this mesh, okay, the corners were rounding a little bit, which I actually liked. Okay, number one, let's remember, whatever subtool is selected is the one that this spotlight is going to use when creating the geometry. It's going to go look and see, oh, you got a selected subtool. That selected subtool based upon camera view is how thick, right? How thick is that? Is it way up here or is it way back? And like, is it this thick? Extreme close up, all right? So I'm going to make sure also what's important is I would probably want to be looking straight on the piece. I wouldn't want to be looking like this because now ZBrush is seeing it camera plane wise, that little check thing, whatever that is on the front of him, it's got a different width now, okay, from that angle compared to that angle, right? So I'm going to make sure I'm looking straight on this. Okay, I'm going to go back into this. And now from here, let's just do default. I click the camera. Bing. Okay, what that's done now is made that mesh. Okay, so you can see the corners have rounded a little bit because there's a smoothing that's happening with this. That's on purpose. We're doing that on purpose. Okay, because we're making a mesh from like an image, and sometimes your images are going to have a little bit of noise and things in them. So the surface would then all have that noise in it. Okay, so we're adding a polishing to the surface when it's being created. Good day from us. Ups and downs. Hold on, I'm just reading Wee's question. Can you displace it like ups and downs? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Can you add a little bit more, Wee, Dante? With grays? No. Okay, there you go. I see what you added. Grays. No. This is only looking at two shades and only two shades. It's looking at pure white and pure black. Anything in between is ignored. Right? Pure black is transparent. Do nothing. Pure white is making the mesh. We've added the ability now, coloring. So if you're going to actually color in this, then those colors become new polygroups. So if I paint red on this, there's going to be now red polygroup when the mesh is made in the front. So that's the only other thing you're doing. But when you're doing what I'm doing right now, where I'm making a piece of geometry from an image, you really only care about pure white, and that's it. And then pure black, transparent. Okay? All right, so let's look at stuff here where there's preferences, right? So I can go here, preferences, and in my spotlight, okay, God, it's warm in here, is there's some preferences here, right? So spotlight has its own preferences of what it can do and things that you want to be able to manipulate. So the ones that become important to us are these four down here at the bottom. So there's a snapshot smoothing. There's a snapshot retaining the corners, snapshot border triangles, and then snapshot detect corners. Okay? So these controls are going to be able to give you how much of a sharpness do you want to have. Okay, so for example, if we just keep the defaults and just turn up this all the way, snapshot retain corners, and then click the camera, that's what we get. Right? So you see it's getting a little bit better. It's not as rounded. Okay? So then I'm going to say, well, let's keep that, and let's just turn the smoothing down. Let's do something like 5. Let's turn it way down. Way, way, way down. Hit the camera. Right? So you can see we're starting to get closer and closer and closer here, right? We're starting to get different variations. If I really, really want to try and stay as sharp as the image as possible, the best things I've found for me, for my controllers, is actually not this slider. Okay? I found turning the smoothing down. I wouldn't recommend turning it all the way down because then you'll get a little bit of rippling in the surface. But using this detect corners. Okay, and so when I click that camera, right, you can see there's the final, like that's pretty much the image. So you can see why I don't use that one slider. If I'm trying to keep something very, very sharp, there you go. That's pretty much the image. And we keep making new subtools right now. So that's how you can retain some sharpness to the image if you're trying to get that sharpness. Whoever answered that question, hopefully you're still here. West Richens. Are you still here? Hopefully that solves your question. Just taking a drink of water real quick. All right. So people, I love this feature a lot for a lot of stuff. Okay. So watch. This is where I also love it and how I'm going to start using it to start cleaning up this guy as we go. Okay. So I'm going to, let's delete. I don't need that one. I'm going to keep my original one because I like my original one. Bing. Bing. Okay. So let's look again at this. And let's just say I want to start making some cutting into the surface. All right. So I'm going to say let's turn on the spotlight again. Let's regroup. Let's look at all the images we got. Oh, let's use this one right here now. Okay. So let's move all these off screen and let's use this one. And I want to use this one, okay, on this surface. So I'm going to snap it to the center top, right? So if I want to move this, how do I want this to move, right? Where do I want this to snap to? Okay? That's what's important to me, where I want this to snap. Right? So I'm going to come out and let's do this. Let's get a little bit more, get this where I want it. I want to just get it for me, my sake. Okay, so I want that. Let's size it down. Okay, and let's go ahead and extend it like this. Okay, and what I'm going to tell ZBrush to do right now is, hey, let's make this shape, but let's do this shape when I make it. Okay, watch this. Let's make it do something else. Okay, and what I've done now is I've got this shape, right, in the surface. Okay, and what this shape has done is done different parts of using it in a different way, right? So I'm using this shape differently. Okay, so I just made the shape, and then I want to be able to do other parts, other things to this shape as well, right? So I've got this subtool, and you can see it made this subtool right below it. Okay? So I start getting a hierarchy here in essence. And again, the width of this is doing this, right? So I've got now this shape, right? Right here, doing whatever I want with it, okay? So I want to also do more with this. I don't want to just say this. I want to have some kind of repeating other element here. Okay, so I would say, all right, let's keep this here. Let's throw Spotlight back on. Okay, let's undo this. Let's get back to this. Let's size this up, center to this, and then this is where tiling comes into play. Okay, so I can tile this. Let's size it up even more, tiling it. Right, I'm going to extend this down a little bit more like this. And let's extend it out. And I'm going to shrink these a little bit, say something like this. Okay? And then now if I want to click the camera, all right, you can see now what I've done. So I've made this shape. I'm reusing the shape, and I'm actually even cutting into the surface now. I'm using the ability of live Booleans now. So now I've got this piece and I've got this piece, and you can see it's already set to subtractive. What's going on, Chris? Right, so I've got that and then a subtractive piece. So what happens here is when I click this camera, I actually held the Alt key. Okay, so if I want to grab something out, like if I want to just use this, okay, so I'm going to snap this, move it up, hold the Alt key, camera. You can see it makes the new subtool and automatically sets it to subtractive, right? So every new subtool I'm creating is subtracting to all the subtools above it. Okay? Is that making sense so far? So I definitely don't want to do this workflow. I'd rather do, okay, well, I've got this subtractive piece, okay, and now I've got this. What if I just add it to the existing? So now instead of making a new subtool, I've added the subtool. This is why we use the subtool's thickness as the guide for how thick things should be. So the mesh that I'm using to cut into this little piece I'm making right now, it's got a particular thickness that's using the cutting. So I just want to make another piece above it that's cutting. So because this is already set to subtractive, why not just add it to the existing piece? That's all I'm doing. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm holding the Shift key and clicking on the camera. Okay, does everyone understand? Do you get that? So what I've done here, what I've done here is I've made a new subtool, holding the Alt key, clicking on the camera, automatically sets it as a new subtool and automatically sets it as a subtractive. Since I have live Booleans on, I'll immediately see that cutting into the surface. Now, since the selected subtool is already a subtractive subtool, and that's the thickness I want on this piece, I want to do multiple thicknesses, I can now just grab any other image, hold the Shift key, and click on the camera, and Shift key is adding to the existing. Does everyone understand that? Everyone getting that from me? Is anybody confused by that? What's up, Michael? It's been a long time. Made it to the Poly group. I like that. Okay. Have I lost anybody here? Because I want to go one more step further with this. Okay. I just got to watch my time because unfortunately I can't go late today because Sakaki is after me, 30 minutes after me. So I got to stay strong with my time. Okay. So this is great. I'm adding all these subtools and these things like that. Now, if we're looking at this subtool, right? And let's just now look only at this subtool. If I wanted the piece to be more like this, cutting into the surface, right? Like that. I want to do something more like that, which is great. Okay, that looks whatever. Okay, that's looking kind of cool, or maybe I prefer to do now that. What happens is this subtool's got geometry sitting over top of it, right? So there's overlapping coplanar topology. That's usually not the best thing to do. ZBrush's live Boolean is probably going to be able to handle that all right, though, but it's probably not the best thing. I wouldn't recommend modeling or sculpting like this. I wouldn't recommend having surfaces sitting on top of surfaces, okay? So instead of this, all right, let's turn off this subtool. Let's go back to this one, because this is the one I'm manipulating and doing things to. Let's go back into Spotlight, okay? So the first thing I want in this image is I want this, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate it. So I made another version. So I've got two versions of this now, okay? And what I'm going to do is literally erase this one. I'm going to start from scratch, okay? So with the paintbrush, okay, if we switch to paint, okay, I can paint on this and I can erase. So you guys see that? I'm actually, and then yes, guess what? You click camera and it actually makes the piece of topology. What? Okay? So just giving you a quick holy moly moment. So what I'm going to do is let's just get rid of this whole thing. So I'm going to go with a big brush size. And I'm just going to hold the Alt key. And what I've done here is in Spotlight, I've switched to the actual painting brush here. Right? And then so this is going to allow me to work how I want it to work, right? So I want, and you can see, make it completely transparent, right? So now that I have this piece, okay, whoops. Okay, I want to now take this and just say, you know what, this is, let's move this out of the way and let's move this and think about it as a blank canvas. Okay, so let me extend it out. I'm going to extend it in. Okay, and I'm going to live somewhere in this world. So I got this floating image with nothing on it, in essence. That's what I have, just some floating image here. Right? So I'm going to now grab this one and go, okay, I want this. Let's size this down. I'm going to want this to be here. Okay? And I'm going to do now is click this little icon right here. Bing. And what that does is now is uses the image as what gets stamped to the underlining image. So if you remember that one image I just sized up real quick and erased, I just added that shape to that image. Right? So to now keep adding to that, right, I then also went, well, let's extend this. And then we started tiling it. Right? And then I'm going to hold the Alt key and shrink this down a little bit. And now this, let's snap it here. Okay, and yeah, I like that. Click the little camera, right? You can see I'm adding that to it. Right? So what I'm going to do is say, all right, I want to do this now. And let's go up here. Let's manipulate this. Let's extend this in a little bit. All right, it's tough for me to see everything, so that's why we have opacity and background opacity. So you can see I can change, so I can see really what I'm working on. Right, and then you have a front and back, so bring it to the front. And now I'm going to say, all right, let's do this instead. So I use the image to actually cut out. So in essence, we've kind of, in a way, ripped live Booleans, or the concept, the idea of live Booleans, out of ZBrush, and even like in a 3D mesh situation, and we're using it on an image-based situation here. And yes, you can import any image you want, as long as you remember it's just pure black and pure white. So you can go make something in another application, import it, and you're off and running. Okay, so in this case, I use this image to cut out from here, right? So of course, just like we keep saying it, I held the Alt key that time, as in cutting, subtracting, alternate, and then clicked on this union icon. All right, now, this spotlight isn't going to work symmetrical. So here's what's cool, right? We have the ability to mirror. Right? And so I can flip this and mirror if I want in both axes. What I also can do is mirror and weld it, in essence. So I can take, hey, I like the left side. I also want that on the right side. So anything I put is going to work. So like, even if I grab this thing again now, and it's, let's say we do this, and I say, oh, okay, I want this to go kind of in a corner here. Click on the union, right? See, it'll drop the image there on this image. Now I select this image. Okay, now that it's selected, I use this. So instead of just flipping it, I want to mirror it. So that's the mirror. And I can mirror any directions that I want to. So I can go this way, I can flip it, right? And I can mirror in multiple ways. So what I'm doing is using shortcuts clearly, right? And if you guys can't remember this, when you guys scroll over Christmas in the corner here, right? So you see these two I'm flipping through? Look at the top left corner of ZBrush. Up here. Up here. Look up, literally. Look up here. Look up here. Look up here. Right? See, it tells you the shortcuts. See, it says just click on it and we'll flip H. If you hold click and shift, we'll mirror left to right. If you click and hold Alt, then it's the other direction. We'll mirror right to left. And then, of course, you go this one. Holding shift is from mirroring from the top to bottom. And then holding the Alt and clicking was mirroring from bottom to top. Okay? If I want those to appear in the back of the body as well, okay, so that's a great question. You got to make this mesh, right? So by default, this is going to use the thickness of whatever my selected subtool is, okay, which is right now this cutting one. So when I click camera, right, it's going to, in essence, make the pieces. So there's the piece I made, right? And then I can move this freely. Okay, so if you want it also on the back side, that's a different thing. First of all, this has a certain thickness to it. So if you wanted to, you could do this. I'm going to hold the Alt key and snap on the front of this. Okay? And what this is going to allow me to do is when I click this, right, if I turn this off, you can see I can change the width. And because there's no spans of topology in the middle, we're good to go. So I can just change this until I see it in the back if I want to. You could 100% just do it like that if you wanted to. Right? So it's on the front and the back. Now, of course, a different way to do this besides just, just doing that and changing the thickness is this has got the world then has a symmetry front and a symmetry back. So I can come down here and I can tell ZBrush to mirror and weld, but what you want to mirror and weld is the Z axis. And I click mirror and weld, and now it's going to show up on the back. Right? So I got it on the front and the back now. So either way is the way you can go about using it. Does that make sense? So again, if you guys are going to bring in your own images, just reiterate, the only thing this feature is going to really be looking at is pure white and pure black. Whatever is the pure white is the mesh that's going to be created. Whatever pure black is, that's transparency. Nothing gets made. That's how I was able to erase an image. I actually painted pure black to erase the image. Okay, and then Vita, does that answer your question about there's two different ways I could have gone about doing that, right, to get it on the front and the back? Does that help get you where you need to go? All right, so my time's almost up. We literally only have 5 minutes left. Okay, so what questions other that maybe that I didn't get to that I missed that you guys might want to ask here? Again, or is there something you want me to repeat while you still have me right now? So obviously my next stage now is I need to finish this guy off. I need to start getting all these pieces now to look the hard surface that I want them to look. Right now they're still not clean. So I showed you earlier in the stream a couple ways that I would start cleaning up some of these, and I got to pick and choose. You use the LB, eh? Nice. Okay, so does everyone get what I was doing here? It's really a great workflow, honestly. It's how you can create some crazy extreme stuff for sure. Avita, I've done a video already about rigging with Z-spheres. I've already done a stream on that. Yeah, I'll show the color thing. So what happens with color? So just so you guys can see it, let's use this. Okay. So if you switch to the paintbrush, right, and I have also the paintbrush selected here, and you grab a color, right, you can just, start doing this. I can say, well, I want to start painting with red, right? So instead of painting with white, right, I want to paint in here with red. Okay, and then maybe I even want to throw an alpha on this. So when I'm painting, it could even be like this. Okay, and if I now switch to another color and I do, whoops, might help if I switch the color, green, I switch to the blue, right, and then the blue, and then I switch this, and doing that, right? So I'm just switching the colors, right? So when you go to make the mesh, and I make this mesh now, if we go look at this mesh, let's turn off the polypaint, and look at polyframe, you can see the colors that I was painting with, they get made as, in essence, a polygroup. So each color that I was painting with becomes its own polygroup for the front surface, and then it gets replicated on the back. And then through the middle, you can see you're going to get variations of polygroups. So that's all painting with color does. It just gives a quick way to, in essence, get rid of something quick on this. Cut it out. Travis, thanks. Okay, so that answers the color. That's all the color's doing. It's whenever you paint Spotlight with the color and you're going to use that camera button, which is the snapshot feature, it's going to create a new polygroup in the surface that it makes. That's what it's doing. Okay. And then the other question that I said to come back to, oh, the rigging. Like I said, yes. Let me see if I can find it really quick, and I'll put a link in here. But I've done a Gremlin stream series in here. So let me see if I can find that video. I'll give it to you in the chat, Vita. And you can at least go watch that. And then from there, if you've got questions the next time I'm streaming, you can fire them away. I would start there, though. All right, hold on. I'm just going to our channel here. Hold on. Actually, it might be better. Let me go a different way. ZBrush Live. I'm going to go through ZBrushLive.com. No, it won't work on... no, really, Joe. No, it won't. But there's something that solves that, Joe. Hold on. I'm just trying to get to something, but this is taking me longer than what it should be. Hold on, sorry. I'm just trying to navigate. I gotta find me in this mess. There I am. There I am. Okay, so number one, here's a page that shows all my past streams for you. And there's a Gremlin one. So there's, I think it was 5 parts, 6 parts. Okay. So I don't remember what part, if it was part 5 or part 6, that I started doing some, in essence, I'd have to look now. I don't remember. It's in one of those. So it might be part 6. It's not part 5. Okay. I'd have to go watch the videos. I don't remember where I did the posing. But at least you have a list there for that. Okay. Bruce, as far as your question about ZBrush Core, the only book that I know of is a Japanese book on ZBrush Core. I don't know of any other book. Okay, and then Joe, to now your question about the surface. Okay, let's see, because we got to end here soon. Okay, so this is what I'm saying with what I'm making right now, what I'm showing you guys. You got to remember, what do I always talk about ZBrush? It's like a chess, a game of chess, or like layering of a cake. There's layering of using a feature and using another feature. So that feature I just showed you guys is really easy to make something. And now Joe is saying, well, I want it to kind of go around a rounded surface, right? Okay. So let's take to what Joe's asking. I don't know where they are now. Give me 1 second. Maybe it's in the tools. It's in the tools. Okay. So to Joe's question, right? You take something like this. It's the same. What if I made that, right? And now I've got this surface that's curved. And he wants it to follow the curve, right? Well, that's pretty simple to do. There, it's following the curve. Problem solved, right? And then this, as you can see, will fit right along that guitar, right? I can even do something like this. right? And then tell it to follow that, and it's even following the sculpted detail. Or like this, right? Flat cube with a rounded, and then following that, see? And now it's going to follow that as well. Yes, just like a that's how I did my Superman logo. Like that's how I would do a logo for superhero, because there's not a big change, right? I would make the logo, and then I would just use this brush, which I'm using Matchmaker, and then it'll just match to the chest. You don't need a lot of movement. Like this brush isn't going to wrap around a cylinder. Like it's not going to do that, okay? But it's going to do probably what you're looking for, Joe, which is that. And by the way, if I was doing a logo, I probably personally, there's more ways. Obviously, you can use that spotlight, but I really like I prefer using this plugin. I would get an SVG of the logo, and then that's how I like to make my logos. That's a good way. Okay? All right, Joe, good. Does that help you out with a question? Give you that answer? And again, Bruce, unfortunately, I can't think of a book off the top of my head for ZBrush Core. Like I said, I know there's a Japanese book, or like you said, there's the videos. But I can't think of anything else on the top of my head. I'm just looking to see if I lost any questions. If not, if there's anything else, because we're going to have to call this a stream, because we got another stream coming up on this channel in less than 30 minutes. An artist from Japan. He's an amazing artist, really beautiful stuff. So if you've enjoyed this stream, you want to stick around and just go get a snack or take a restroom break, boss, go ahead and do that and stick around for Sakaki in his stream that's happening in about 27 minutes from now. Okay, any last minute questions? When Weston, when you're asking, would dynamics do that? You're talking about conforming. Yeah, the dynamics would conform, but it's not going to do this. Because if we live to your answer, okay, to your question, watch. If we did now dynamics on this, right? And let's do this, dynamics. Okay, now it's calculated the volume. Let's just switch to this cloth brush. To your question, you're doing this, right? That's what it's going to do, right? The surface is just going to keep, the entire surface is going to keep trying to match the surface it's trying to dynamically connect to. So that's not going to work. Matchmaker's keeping the volume. This is not going to keep the volume if I keep pulling down on this, right? Because this is now, see, colliding, and then now all of this, the bottom and the top half need to come, they're coming together because I've pulled down enough to make that happen. See, and that's what's happening. Does that make sense? So dynamics wouldn't be a way to go about doing this. 100%, this would be the way to go about doing it. See the difference? And then now that is matching the surface that I want it to match. Well, right now I've got dynamics on. Right now I'm using dynamics, right? And then that's what I'm looking for, is something like that. And then I still got all my volume. Wrapping around the sphere is a completely different thing, no plastic. You would have to give me something as an example, like what are you trying to wrap around a sphere? And then I could probably give you features that would do what you're looking for. Okay? So if you guys do have something like no plastic, since I got to get going here, again, there's multiple ways you guys can communicate with me, right? So I'm going to put my ZBC name. If you guys just go on ZBC and anything you make, you put @PixoPaul, I'll get an email. Okay? If you want, here's my email, man. Right? I'm happy to help any way we can, man. You're ZBrush users, we're family, right? So no plastic. I don't know your real name. If there's some in particular that, hey, would you be able to show this in your next stream? If you give me something ahead of time, maybe I'll put something together and be able to answer the question for you too. Okay, so either email me or give me an example that you're trying to make something on ZBrush Central, and then we can look and see what would be maybe the approach how we would go about doing that. Okay? All right, unfortunately, I got to go because I got to get off so Sakaki can go. So thank you for taking your time tonight, for those that are night, early in the morning, for those in Japan right now that I don't have had in here. Thank you, East Coast people. It's late for you, later for you. You're, okay, West Coast people. Why aren't you at work right now? Okay, So I really appreciate you coming in, watching this. Again, I'm going to continue working on Soundwave. So I'm going to come back and give you guys some more stuff of what I would do with him and how I would work with him, because I really want to finish him off and do a series of Transformers. I think it's a fun. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being a part of the stream with me. This isn't fun unless you're here and you guys are throwing spit wads at me. Okay, so thank you for watching. This is Paul Gaboury for another episode of ZBrush Live. Did you know that? And I'm out!